I think all of us have been patiently, well, maybe we haven't been so patient, waiting for our technical assistance providers to finally get the contract signed. And I believe at our last meeting that was finally followed through on. So today's meeting is mostly about our technical assistance. And so everyone hopefully got a chance to look at that agenda and think about some things. I think there's only a few commissioners here today. So again, we're not in any position to be voting on anything without a quorum or anything, which I don't think that would have been the purpose of today's meeting anyways. But getting started, if there are any members of the public who would like to make a public comment, I'll go ahead and open up the floor for that. And just remember, there will be room at the end of the meeting. We'll save a couple minutes as well if anyone would like to make public comment. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, not hearing anybody. Don't see anything in the chat. So with that, I guess to start off, Jenny, if you want to do roll call, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
I sure can. Well, welcome everybody this afternoon. So I'll go ahead and give the roll call. If I mispronounce names or I don't give you the correct name, please just let me know in the comments. So Commissioner Gielan.
Here.
Commissioner Detman.
Here.
Commissioner Armstrong Romero. I think Kyla's with us today. Commissioner Rogers.
I am here, thanks.
Commissioner Murphy. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I'm here, and it's Commissioner Kay Williams.
Kay Williams, okay, thank you. Commissioner Davala. Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Lewis. Commissioner Perez.
Here.
And Vice Chair Rojo.
I am here. All right, thank you very much. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So looking at what we got first on the agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Gwynn now for our technical assistance introductions.
Hello, everyone. So today we're kicking off the meeting by hearing from one of our TA providers, Eliza Kaplan, and I believe her intern is also with her today. So they will be introducing themselves and then briefly describing the role of other TA providers from the Council of State Governments, which they could not be here today, but they will be here in the future. And then she will talk more about their progress on the inventory, which I believe she emailed a quick handout, so it should be at the top of your inbox. And then before I hand it over to Eliza and her intern, I wanted to talk more about the role of the TA and the role of the CJC support staff. So we're grateful for the TA providers to be on board, but we need to remember the time frame, funding, and scope of work that they are contracted for. The JJPC has a lot of important work to accomplish, and the TA is only one aspect of that work. They are contracted for specific deliverables, which are highlighted in the scope that was sent out prior to the meeting, and we went over it last meeting as well, but I will share it here just so it's at the top of our mind. So I can figure out, there we go. You should be seeing that now, I believe. So there are three, can you see it?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so there are three main tasks for the scope of tasks requested of the TA providers. So the first is related to policy best practices. So that involves providing examples of best practices, policies, and reform activities by connecting the commission with national experts for peer learning. And then it also includes presenting findings to the commission on the implementation of best practices, quality assurance, and performance measures of reforms. And then the second task of the TA, which is their first focus, is the Oregon Initiatives Inventory. And that involves preparing a comprehensive inventory of government committees and work groups in Oregon engaged in juvenile justice initiatives. They will then present this information with a focus on the alignment of the work groups, the redundancies between the groups, and then possible gaps. After that's done, they will review the other states' juvenile justice systems and present findings. And then this is the piece that they'll need a bit more guidance from the JJPC because they need to narrow their focus for this to be a reasonable task within the timeframe and the budget of their contract. And then the final task of the TA is to review and provide feedback on the drafted report. And they will not be preparing the report or taking a key role in that aspect. They're reviewing and they're providing guidance on what is produced by the JJPC in collaboration with us at the CJC. And so the TA providers overall are gathering and providing existing information. So they won't be providing new information or new research. They won't be collecting new data or performing new analysis. Rather, they'll be informing the JJPC about what has already been done. And then the CJC research staff are here for other support. I can stop sharing. Yes. So the CJC, we're here for other support. So for instance, one commissioner last meeting, I believe, gave a hypothetical example involving looking at recidivism. So they floated the example of what data do juvenile departments and OA use to evaluate recidivism, to look at the discrepancies between OA and juvenile departments, and kind of present recommendations for better alignment across the state in terms of measurement and what is going on already. So research staff at CJC would support that effort by collecting and synthesizing that information and bringing it back to you all to discuss. And then another topic, which was mentioned by another commissioner, involved looking at the data from OKID and OA reports. So this is something that we could do, the CJC staff, not the TA providers, would look into those reports, synthesize it, compile it, present it to you all. And then maybe there are some parts of those reports that you would like to look at a different combination of data from different demographic groups. And this could be something that CJC staff look into getting a data sharing agreement or looking at existing data sharing agreements so we could explore different groups that you might be interested in that are not already in those reports. So then all of that, you all were chosen and appointed to the commission because you have the knowledge and you have the expertise and the experience needed to provide guidance to the state. And we have the CJCs and the TA providers. We're here to support that process, but we're not the ones to choose and guide the direction of the commission. And you all are in the driver's seat for great reasons. And so this will be a close collaboration with the TA providers, and we will need your input on where to focus, especially because you all know Oregon the best. And I think that's most of what I have. But what, if any, questions do you have on TA research support before I hand it over to Eliza? Commissioner Rogers, I see you have your hand.
Good morning, or good afternoon, sorry. I don't have any questions really specifically now. I appreciate the delineation between the two, and I will probably have questions afterwards. So I just appreciate the fact that we're getting somewhat of a delineation on where and how the responsibilities line up.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation, especially as things come up. Awesome. So Eliza, if you would like to take over the reins.
Great. Can everyone hear me? The first thing I'm going to say, Kelly, sorry, it's Eliza. I know. I didn't want to interrupt you, but since I'll be seeing most of you again or a few times, I like to have it out there correct. So I'm Eliza Kaplan. I'm a professor of law at Lewis and Clark Law School. Some of you I know or I've met over the years. I'll just quickly tell you a little bit about my background. I'll focus on the youth stuff, but in general, I've worked in criminal justice for about 25 years. I've played a lot of different roles. I mostly work on the back end of the system, both as a lawyer. I've represented adults and youth in various capacities. I run a law clinic here at the law school, and we have a program throughout OIA called our Youth Legal Clinic, where we provide legal information, navigation to incarcerated youth all over the state. We've had that since 2018, I think. I've done numerous academic studies and reports on our own and with criminologists. So we've done a lot of data work and quantitative and qualitative studies on various topics. And I've written, in the legal sense, I've written, dozens of law-reviewed articles on various criminal justice topics. So I'm happy to be here. This is an exciting opportunity for us to, be on the ground with the people who do this work throughout our system with juveniles. And so we're happy to be able to support in any way we can as the technical support. And I'm here with Lila Scott, who's my amazing college intern from University of Oregon, who's been helping me with stuff and is really interested in juvenile justice and going to law school for that. So it's a perfect connection. So that's a little bit about me. Again, I'm happy to give you my resume. I think that's in the materials, but I'm happy to answer any questions about me. And also, as Kelly mentioned, we are subcontracting and partnering with the Council of State Governments Justice Center, CSG, and they're going to be working with us. They've worked in Oregon and they've worked all over the country on these issues, so they're a great partner. For people who don't know, they're a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. They serve state officials in all three branches of government with policy and research expertise to develop strategies that increase public safety and strengthen communities. They are the foremost national organization working to position states and localities to engage in data-driven juvenile and criminal justice reform. And here in Oregon, they've been engaged with OJD over the last, I think, 2 or 3 years in doing some juvenile work as well. In the handout that I provided, I also put the individual bios of Josh Weber and Christina Gilbert, I think. Did I? If I didn't, let me just, or maybe I just did the CJC. CJ, am I getting it right? CSG, God help. So many letters. Anyway, well, I'll give you a quickie on them. Josh Weber, he's the director of the Juvenile Justice Program. He's one of the folks I'm working with. He's been there since 2013. He's managed and led policy, research, and technical assistance staff to guide and support state and county officials to assess and improve their juvenile justice system, policies, and practices. He's developed and led an extensive portfolio on research, technical assistance, strategic planning, publication, and other resource and product development activities. We're also working with Christina Gilbert, who is the project manager at the Juvenile Justice Program at CSG. She supports multiple projects to help jurisdictions in the field improve outcomes and equity for youth in the juvenile justice system nationwide. So I feel really lucky to be working with them. I've already been working with them a little bit, and they're a wealth of information. They know exactly where things are from around the country, and they'll be especially helpful once the priorities here are narrowed and we need best practices and things that are going on in other states. They have a lot of that at their fingertips, or they can help advise me where to find it and who to talk to. So that's who we are. Do you want me to keep going on the inventory? Is this the appropriate time, Kelly? Okay.
Yes.
So for since we've been sort of appointed, or contracts have been finalized, we actually started a little bit before. So May and June, we've been working on, I think it was decided that even though it's number 2 on our list of deliverables, that we would start with number 1, because before we sort of rush off and decide all the things, we thought it would be helpful to get a inventory of everything that's already out there with regard to studies and reports. What has actually already been done? What do we already have? And how it is, what does it all say? And how can we look at it and use it going forward to make some decisions about priorities and stuff? So what we've done so far is we've located 58 studies or reports from between 2014 and 2025. They analyze Oregon's juvenile justice system and highlight current efforts being made by other organizations and commissions to better Oregon's juvenile justice system all over the state. The methods that we use to collect these have been connecting with juvenile justice experts for consults on known research, reports, and studies. And additionally, Lila's done an amazing web-based research. And of the 58 studies located so far, 43 are quantitative reports, with the remaining 15 being qualitative. Also, 28 of the studies are statewide reports, whereas 30 are geographically specific reports on Oregon's 27 judicial districts. All of the findings, studies, and reports that we locate, there might be more, we're still looking and speaking to people, but all of the ones that we find, all of it, by the September meeting, the official coming up meeting, we will organize everything that we find into a PowerPoint presentation with an overview for each resource, and we will create a Dropbox or something like a Dropbox that will have every single study in it, so that everything will be accessible with summaries for all the commission members. If anyone, and we've given you a handout that kind of lists them all quickly, if you want to take a look, if anyone knows of anything that's missing, or we've spoken to some of you already, but if there's anyone you think we should speak to find something that's missing, please let us know. Or you have any recommendations yourself, we'd be more than happy to add it to our collection there and do a summary of it. And that's sort of where we are. You have the list, and yeah, we look forward to presenting it with a lot more detail in September. I also, I don't know when the appropriate time is, Kelly, but I also wanted to just make a statement from our perspective regarding legislative sessions and stuff like that. Is now okay to do that?
I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so one of the things we also did is we took a look at the time frame over the next 2 legislative sessions, and I feel like we know that one of the main jobs of the commission is to participate and have a voice in various ways, whatever you all decide in the legislative process. And I feel, is this the right thing here? I want the chart that I can read. Oh, thank you. So I feel like, we kind of went through for ourselves, a calendar idea. And I think the way we look at it is if this commission wants to weigh in or have some kind of cleanup bill or something in the short session, and also think about the long session, that simultaneously, beginning really soon, there's a bunch of things that, could be done. But I feel like the time is pretty short. And for example, and I think Kelly mentioned this too, the most important thing is that if you want to weigh in on anything in either session, that you have, your priorities 1 to 3 at the most. And, we could then have enough time to give you information, best practices, what's out there. I just want to make sure that everyone knows, we're here to be helpful, but a lot would have to happen in a really short amount of time if people want to, for example, if you wanted to do some cleanup legislation in the short session, then, we'd have to figure out what needs to be cleaned up by September, right? If we wanted to draft anything, that would have to be also sometime by September. And then at the same time, if you want to be involved in the longer session, we would have to simultaneously over the next year, while dealing with whatever you want to do in the short session, we would also have to be ready to go by next summer with like language for a bill and start meeting with legislators and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's exactly what you want to do, or you just want to chime in on things, but I just want to raise that, at least from our perspective, in order to do our technical assistance in either session, time is short, even for the long session, to get all the pieces done. And
Commissioner Rogers, you've got a hand up. Question for Carolyn. Yeah.
You know,
Hi.
I'm never quiet. Sorry, Pablo.
Hi,
Lisa.
Molly.
I guess I need to push back on that a little bit from a member perspective, that we have what we are supposed to do from the legislative perspective,
Mhm.
which is start with a report. And so I feel I'm hesitant to even put in a pin that we're going to be making recommendations by September of the year. We've had 3 meetings that have, in the last 2, not very well attended. That I feel like, let's do this right, guys. And so I would be pushing from a member perspective to let us drive our priorities and have our discussions and not be pressured into.
Okay, that's
anything.
fine. I'm just giving you the timeline for like legislative stuff and our ability to respond in that time frame. If you choose not to do anything in the short session, then that's fine. You'll just, whenever you make your priorities, then we'll be happy to provide whatever information you need. I'm just looking at the legislative calendar and knowing that if you wanted to weigh in the short session, there's lots of deadlines. And then for the long session, same goes, right? So I'm just raising those as issues. If these are things, I have no decision-making power. I don't have any, we're just here to provide information. But I am saying that if those are things that you might want to do, then time does matter.
I totally appreciate that, and have been around a long time as well, for timelines for the legislature. I don't know that was what our role specifically is to create some of those things. So I think time
Great.
and coming in, we can still have thoughts and opinions on others that bring bills up. And that's really where I think we can do some work really good for the legislature. So I appreciate that.
Great.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Commissioner Rogers. The way I see this body and our work with the technical assistance going is, if we are, tasked with making recommendations to the legislature, reviewing legislation that others are proposing, because we have all been put together as sort of this body of expertise, whether it's through lived experience or through our education department, right, through our juvenile departments. We all have our different levels of expertise. And so what I would like to see is just us identifying these priority areas that I think we've highlighted, and we can go over those with you. Because I think we may have went over those with you, Aliza. I don't remember. Point is, I would want us to get good data, compile that good data, and discuss it, make a good report. And I think that is the way we can best serve our role right now, is just getting the best data that we can, compiling it together, having discussions, and presenting that to the legislature as sort of the expert, and give them that.
Great, less work for me. That's fine. I feel like we discussed the list, or maybe you sent it to me, but I think when you sent it to me, you said, I think everyone agreed it was really long, and that the group, the commissioners, were going to narrow the list of priorities.
Yeah, and so we did. Yeah, and I can well, Kelly, I don't know if you have a copy of it that you can pull up with the highlights, because I'm not good at screen sharing. But so the number one thing, we did a survey and we basically took all the legislatively assigned, oh, well, there they are, areas under the statute that we are supposed to focus on as a commission. And so you can see those highlighted areas are the top 4 areas that we would like to focus on. I mean, obviously we have to focus on all of these areas, and that's been brought up numerous times, but as far as everyone seemed to agree that these top 4 areas are our priorities for now when we're first starting to gather this data, analyze it, and preparing for a report in the future.
The
those
top
are
4 or the highlighted?
yeah, there's a highlighted, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so that's key drivers of system involvement, service delivery, disparities, and opportunities with better alignment with constitutional mandates and best practices.
Great. I'd love a copy of that.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that we get a copy of that to you, because obviously that is going to help guide you in where the collection of data should be going.
Well, we're going to do the inventory on everything and present that and sort of make some connections in September. And then everyone will have all of that. And then hopefully you'll be able to then we can kind of move to these 4 specific areas and work to get best practices and learn about what's happening in other states. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. So I don't know if Kelly, if you want to take it back over, if anybody else had questions right now for Eliza.
I think we could open it up for questions while we have them, if there are any others. Commissioner Rogers, and I think you were first, and then Commissioner Detman.
Oh, please, Brian, let Brian go. Let Commissioner Detman go first.
Yeah, Brian Detman. Feels funny to be called Commissioner Detman. You can just call me Brian. I just want to make sure I heard this correctly. Obviously, this kind of broader system review piece. But that review kind of almost landscape kind of scan or environmental scan will not be driven by those priorities. Is that what I heard? And why wouldn't we want to try to focus it a bit more? And I just want to make sure I'm thinking about the connection between the things that the commission is wanting to pursue, and they're pretty broad in general areas. Commissioner Rojo had put them up, or maybe Kelly, maybe you put them up. I can't remember. So, yeah, how can we focus and try to have some momentum around perhaps the things we already know, and on the other hand, we don't want to miss things, right? And there may be aspects of these priorities that are even maybe over time have risen more to the top, or maybe there's a discussion we need to have as a commission about, like, do we still think these are the right things? But I'm just wondering, how do we tie and focus your energy versus a broad scan and things across the country, ideally with systems that are more locally driven than statewide? Like, there's just that's like a pretty big task that I hope doesn't take up more time than is needed.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. Brian, we have already done a huge look at just Oregon. We haven't gone beyond Oregon. And I think the initial goal, and it is one of our deliverables, is to put together every study report, et cetera, that has already been done into one place. We will still do that. We will have a little summary. We will put them all together. We also, and we were planning on doing this, we were planning on doing this already, but to kind of make connections between the different reports. But certainly we can add a focus on any of the studies or reports that, address any of the priorities. We can also bring those, highlight those. That's not a problem. We're already looking at everything pretty closely. So we can do that. And then our next steps after that will be working with our subcontractor, because they really have their hand in what's happening in other states. We can have them look specifically at these priorities with regard to best practices in other states, and they can bring more into that. Does that make sense?
If I could also quickly chime in.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so for the priorities are just kind of to get the momentum going. So we are, well, you all are going to focus on all 9. So it could also be once the TA, their contract is over, you'll have that inventory to fall back on when you finally get to one of these other areas that you haven't highlighted as the top 4, if that makes sense. So it's almost like a little lit review that you can use later on when they're not part of the JJPC. We're not being contracted with them. Does that make sense? And then I think Commissioner Rogers or Commissioner K. Williams, if you want to, whoever wants to go.
Go ahead.
Were you saying for me to go ahead? Okay, so I wonder if it would be helpful I agree with what Brian was saying in terms of the focus. And I hear what you're saying, Kelly, is that we have a one-time opportunity to gather information that we need to use for all of our priorities. Based off of our discussion at the last meeting, I wonder if it would be helpful to talk about which entity is going to collect some of this information, because some of these are, for example, looking at number 5 on our list. We need information and data about what are the current racial, ethnic, and other forms of disparities that Oregon youth are experiencing. And my understanding, tell me if I'm correct, is that CJC would be providing that data set to us. Is that correct?
So not necessarily. So we don't have the youth data, but we would work with the data sharing agreement with OIA, OJD, whoever houses that data. So yes, through us, but not directly from us. We have the adult system.
Yes, but you're going to be it. So this piece we need as a commissioner. I think that I need the current data about what our experiences that youth have, and not only the youth who are coming into the juvenile justice system, but I think what we also need to look at as commissioners are what's the data for the youth not coming into the system, and why are some youth not coming in and other youth are coming in? And then in terms of the local and national best practices, in terms of gathering that information, we need to collect information about what are the local and national best practices to reduce disparities. For example, there are people who are working on opportunity-based probation, which I think is one of the only things that's been, that is a reform effort that has not been shown to have disparities. There are lots of reform efforts, but unfortunately, many of the reform efforts in the juvenile justice system benefit white youth over other youth. And so each category has these different levels of information that we're going to need. And I guess between the 3 places we're going to get it, I'm wondering if we need to have a conversation about each one of these areas to point out what is CJC going to gather, what is Aliza and her team going to gather, and what is the Council for State Governments going to gather, and how do they all play in? Because right now it feels I'm having a hard time understanding, and maybe I'm the only one. So if I'm the only one, we can move on. But I think I would prefer that kind of discussion, because it seems like our ability to gather information is limited to this contract period.
Elisa, you could You can respond.
Thank you, Commissioner Kay Williams, Lisa. I totally agree. And I can tell you right now, and this is not a surprise, that in a bunch of the things we're looking at, for example, there are, racial, ethnic disparity issues in many of the studies and reports, and one in particular, it's all about that. So I think we're going to keep gathering them because we're already through it. But maybe if the commission gave us, these questions under each one, we can pull that out really specifically and highlight it and point to it and explain it. And we could use our time doing that instead of summarizing every single report, which is, what we've started to do based on deliverable that says do an inventory of everything. So, we welcome that, but we do need, what are all the questions? Then we can work with CSG to go get it from their perspective, and then CJC can do their, we can all sort of put our hands in our pile and get more specific to what you need. But we would need probably a little bit more direction for some of these bigger, these are sort of broad categories, but I think that would be really helpful for us too. Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner Rogers, your question.
Okay, I'm glad I let everyone else go ahead of me. I appreciate that. I do want to come back, and I think maybe that's at least Lisa's comment was really important, is an inventory is really broad. I don't know that we ever had the conversation of what we wanted to see in an inventory. I think that's unfortunate that you then got to go out and do all this massive search, because I do feel like our 9 key areas and the 4 that we chose as top is really figuring out the inventory and the data sets around those areas. And then the demographic piece of it is a key piece of that for us moving forward. The other is how do I reach out to you and let you know about other documents that might be out there? And county research teams that actually develop and have produced reports on their juvenile justice populations, specifically around the number 1 priority for us on the key drivers. So thank you. I appreciate the narrowing it and having us have a conversation at inventory. And then how do I get you information?
Great. As I said before, we welcome any information you have. So I can just send you an email if that's okay, Commissioner. Great. Thanks.
And I'm sorry, I didn't see if anyone else has their hand. Oh, I see Commissioner Gielen. Go ahead.
I'm not sure. It depends on how all the information is brought together, but not all analysis is equal in its quality. I've been a part of a recipient of some reports of our juvenile justice system that were kind of built on faulty logic. And so just want to be sure that as we're compiling and bringing together the information and making decisions based on it, that we're citing the sources along the way, so that we can also have some opportunities for analysis of recognizing what might have informed certain conclusions of different reports.
And Professor Kaplan, you can respond to that if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not our job to judge them necessarily, but anything we produce will be cited, of course.
And I think that goes back. You said that there would be the Dropbox with all the
and
study.
We're going to put everything in it, of course. And I think that, I think initially our large inventory was to find every single thing out there that we could find, and we've started that process. But it sounds to me like in this meeting, unless there's someone that doesn't agree, that we need to now go rather than do a summary. We will still put them all in the Dropbox and all that for people, but rather than that, we want to focus on your 4 priority issues. So we will pull we will pull, what we find in the different ones and put it together in, summaries of each one. If there's crossover or analysis, we could do that, but only in a way to present. We're not, here's this, here's that. Everything, of course, will be cited. And we welcome, as I said before, more specific questions about what the commission wants to see under each of these, and then we can respond accordingly based on what we find, and we can get CSG to do the same. And I'm positive they will be citing everything as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, actually, if there's any more, okay, I don't see any more hands. I have a question then, Professor Kaplan, just about the Dropbox. So I know you'll be citing everything, but there was also when you first spoke, mention of speaking to some, just speaking to people, right, and gathering information that way. Could we expect also like who obviously you're citing everything, would their information be in the Dropbox, or is that something that would just be cited in your summary that you present in September?
So far, the only people we've talked to are, we got a report that CSG did in Oregon. So we talked to them. And we reached out to a couple people on this commission that we knew might have some information, and we weren't done doing that. And as we heard today, there's some folks who do have more information. So we were reaching out to people that were recommended who are on the commission. Besides that, we have found everything else online. But if, of course, we go sort of outside this group or window and speak to someone, we will definitely let you know. We'll indicate that.
Thank you.
But I also just want to say that, like, whoever recommends it, there's a study or a report.
Right.
So
that would as well.
Yeah.
Okay. That helps. Thank you. And then we're kind of running low on time now, looking at the agenda. Well, I guess we touched a lot of the stuff that's on the agenda just in this discussion. So Kelly, I see the future informational sessions as part of our agenda. I feel like we kind of started to get into, some of the areas we want to get into. So I don't know if you want to guide that some more right now before we get to next steps and action items.
I think that we can if there's more for this conversation, definitely continue since we have the TA provider on the meeting. I think that a more productive route might be talking through an approach to addressing the details that Commissioner K. Williams originally specified about how there are, like, say, for that priority 5, there are so many things within that. So maybe talking amongst the commission about what the approach is going to be on identifying that. Is it going to be something you all do on individually and then meet? Because we should discuss that. I think that would be the best use of this time, with Professor Kaplan on the line too.
Absolutely. So with that, does anybody have any thoughts or guidance on what they would want to see regarding what Commissioner K. Williams mentioned? All right, I see Commissioner K. Williams' hand. Go ahead.
Well, I would let Commissioner Murphy go, since I'll go after him.
Yeah. Commissioner Murphy, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm sorry I was a little bit late today. I would ask that before we focus on national best practice or what other states are doing, I would really like to know what Oregon sees, to the extent we can. So to the number 5, it is broad. Racial, ethnic, and other forms of disparities. Obviously, it's a concern, but it's of limited value to me when I see what's happening nationally or in other regional areas. I would really like to know Oregon's racial disparity hot points. I would really like to know, based on Oregon's system, the focused concerns. And then we can maybe pivot back out when I look at priority number 3, which is the national best practices. And I'd want to, instead of focusing on disparities in potentially other locations, solutions to the same disparities we identify locally. if that makes sense. So one way to narrow down, in my opinion, is I would ask that we really focus on what Oregon's doing and we not get caught up in a potentially broader conversation of national trends. Oregon, I think, is ahead in a lot of ways. I also think it's probably going to be identified that we're behind in others. But I think it should be very Oregon focused when we talk about the larger picture of improving our law, our policy, et cetera, et cetera. So for all of these points in my mind, I read about them and I kind of think about them, but then I begin to think about how do we identify that as a local Oregon system? And what are those data points that we're really going to focus on?
All right. All right. Lisa K. Williams.
Yes, thank you. I think that what would be helpful, and I know summer, everyone's very busy all the time, but certainly during the summer, I think it would be, I wonder if it's possible for each of us to look at this and do what Professor Kaplan, I think it was, who suggested it, is write out a list of questions that each of us have under these categories, and perhaps circulate that and then either set another meeting to talk about that. Because I think that it would be beneficial to give the folks during this limited time period of technical assistance some guidance sooner rather than later about what are the questions that we have under each of these categories. What's the information that we need in order to move forward?
Thank you. I also think that that is a great idea because we need to be guiding our technical assistants. Any other thoughts or ideas about this?
I can chime in real quick.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that's a good approach, Lisa K. Williams. I do want to mention the public meeting laws with when you say circulate it. So in terms of serial communication, we should just talk about how we will approach that topic, which Ryan will have more knowledge of that than me. I'm kind of new to public meetings, but it is something to have on our radar. And I think even like say for racial, ethnic, and other forms of disparities, just asking yourself questions on which racial groups do we have data on? What other forms of disparities are we talking? Are we talking age, geographical location, gender, sexuality? So even just highlighting those like measurement parts of it, just to narrow down the topic, would be another suggestion in terms of narrowing it down. But I think that's all I have.
All right. Anybody else? All right. So with that,
Well, we have two. Commissioner Rogers. You might not be able to see that. Commissioner Rogers, and then Professor Kaplan after that.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers, and then
Yeah, Commissioner Rogers, I'm not shy from that. I really appreciate, Kelly, you bringing up the public meeting law. I do think, though, that maybe, Lisa, I would ask after this discussion, if Elisa and the technical assistance team kind of understands more what we're looking for, if that has been able to guide some questions really for these top 4 priorities that we have listed. We have 2 number 2s, which is interesting. That works out okay. But just like in our conversation that we've brought to you, did we give you some more guidance? Like really being Oregon specific, what are the data points? Where can we find those reports? And maybe we've already given you some information that can guide the work. I don't know if we have or not, but hopefully we have.
Thank you. I mean, we are only doing Oregon specific, so we were already doing that, as Commissioner Murphy mentioned. And we were going to go to CSG for best practices and, and outside stuff. And if everyone agrees with what Commissioner Murphy said, then we can hold off on that till after September, no problem. And I think that, we can look through everything that we have or that we're going to still get and focus in these areas to some degree. But as I think Kelly was saying, the more detail, the better. So for example, if we're looking at racial and ethnic, disparities, do you want us to just look in the system? Do you want us, based on the materials that we have, do you want us to look at dropout rates and those kinds of things too? You know, like, again, we can look at everything we have and we can put forward based on these issues. But if the commission wants something more specific, I just want to try to give that to you by September. So if, you know, we'll get started today on like focusing in on these areas rather than doing an entire inventory. That's fine. Happy to do that. But I think, you know, the more focused we can be. So it just really depends what you have expectations for in September, or what would be the most useful. And the other thing I'll say is it's almost July. So in order for us to get it done and present and have all the materials, we would just want that information soon, if there's more detail, sooner rather than later. But, and then I think, Kelly, you mentioned CJC can also do some analysis on some of these topics too. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, an idea that I have after you're saying that is, you know, I do, going back to previous discussions that we've had, at least on the commission, I think the inventory, especially for this kind of first real substantive report that we would do in September, is pretty important to have a pretty broad one. The more I think about it again, but we have identified these focus areas, and I think some of that may be more